With that, I would like to introduce Shana Ramsey from the wonderful Wolf Lake Hatchery.
Thank you, Ed. Am I spotlighted?
You should be.
I am still seeing your screen.
There we go.
All right. Hi, friends. Shana Ramsey. I am coming to you all the way from the Wolf Lake State Fish Hatchery. I'm located in Mattawan, Michigan. So those of you that like to use the hand for locations, I am over here. And today, like Ed said, we're going to talk about fish. We're going to talk about where they live, and we are going to talk about how the DNR helps to conserve all natural resources, but specifically how we work with fish to promote fishing opportunities and healthy lakes, rivers, and streams. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you a short video to give you a taste of what we're going to talk about today. Are found here at the Wolf Lake State Fish Hatchery, and we are going to learn about them today. First, let's talk about the DNR a little bit, who I work for, and what we do besides just fish. So in the upper left-hand corner here, you see our logo. So this is the Department of Natural Resources. You also see it on my shirt here. And in the middle here, you see a picture of our conservation officers. So these are officers that help to enforce laws and rules that protect natural resources. That could mean a certain game species, a season for hunting or fishing, a certain size, like you see this deer here. You may like to hunt for deer, or somebody in your family. Well, we have people that help to make sure that everybody's following the rules to protect the resource. There are also commissioned peace officers that might work with your local law enforcement. Now, beneath that picture of the deer, you see this monarch butterfly. We also work with species that are not hunted or fished for, non-game species like butterflies. We might plant flowers or grasses to help butterflies or other species. So we work a lot with all wildlife. Then in the middle here, you see this picture of a forest. You might like to go for a nice quiet walk in the woods. We all know that forests are special places. They have a lot of plants and animals that they support. They make oxygen. And we also use trees to make things that we use every day, like paper, like pencils, building houses. So our job as the DNR is to make sure that we can do all of those things. We balance nature with people. And then in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see this picture of people camping. This is my favorite thing to do with my family, and I hope you like to do it too, or if you haven't, maybe you'll try it. But we have 103 special state parks here in Michigan where you can go and enjoy camping or hunting or fishing or swimming, having a campfire, making s'mores. So those are special places for people to enjoy, but also that are protecting some kind of special resource there. That could be a lake, a forest, the sand dunes, but the DNR does a lot more than just fish. Let's talk about that. What do we do with fish? Well, we know that fish live in water, right? Well, we happen to live in Michigan that has a lot of water. We have 36,000 miles of rivers and streams. We've got 11,000 inland lakes, and we've got those Great Lakes that surround Michigan, and they hold 20% of the world's fresh water. So that's a lot of fish habitat. Here in Michigan, we have 154 different kinds of fish, and no matter where you are standing in Michigan, you're never more than 7 miles away from a fishable body of water. So how does the DNR take care of all this? We do it in lots of different ways. One of the ways we do it is with fish hatcheries, where I work. So a fish hatchery is a place where we raise and care for fish. We give them everything they need to survive: food, water, shelter, and space. And when they get big enough, we put them out in lakes, rivers, and streams. Now, here are these pictures of Wolf Lake. You can see we have both indoor and outdoor facilities. This picture in the lower left is giving you an aerial picture of all the ponds we have here. And right above that, we can see some of these tanks where we raise fish indoors. Above that, we see one of our technicians netting some fish out of one of the ponds. We've got fish eggs in jars, and we've got these big long buildings over here called raceways where we raise our trout, and then we've got some more ponds. So a fish hatchery is a big place, and we actually have 6 of them here in Michigan. But at Wolf Lake, we raise 4 different kinds of fish. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can see this fish, Chinook salmon. We have about 1.5 million eggs this year for this fish. To the right, we have walleye. This species arrives in the spring, and we raise between 40 and 50 million, that's right, million of these every year. Below that, you see steelhead trout. They've got that beautiful pink stripe that goes across the side, and they're really a favorite of anglers. They're really strong. They jump, they leap. They're really fun to catch. We raise between 700,000 and 800,000 of those. And to the left here, we've got a Great Lakes muskellunge. We nickname them the muskie because muskellunge is kind of hard to say. But this fish is really great because we call them the fish of 10,000 casts. That's because they are hard to catch. But if you do, you could catch a giant fish that could weigh as much as 58 pounds or 58 inches long. That'd be really fun to catch. Let's talk to one of my friends and learn just a little bit more about why fish hatcheries are so important. This is Brian. He's a fish expert, a fish biologist. Let's learn what he has to say about fish hatcheries.
One thing we do is we have fish hatcheries that raise and care for fish to stock them into Michigan waters. But why do we do this? Stocking is done to accomplish 3 things: to bring back native populations of fish, to create ecosystem balance, or to create fishing opportunities.
All right, so let's think about that. The 3 main reasons why we have fish hatcheries: creating fishing opportunities. We want you to catch fish out there, and people come from all over the world, all over the United States to our lakes, our rivers, our streams, including us as Michiganders, and we want them to catch fish. We also put fish in lakes and rivers because we want healthy lakes and rivers, and that's what a balanced ecosystem is. So we know we need fish out there. If Lake Michigan, which is about 30 miles behind me right now, had no fish in it, it wouldn't be very healthy. So we need fish out there to keep them healthy. The other reason Brian mentioned is that we raise fish to help bring back populations. So if fish numbers started to decline, we want to try to bring them up. Native populations of fish are important to a healthy ecosystem. All right, let's go back in and learn a little bit more.
One thing we do is
there we go. To think about why fish hatcheries are important today, we need to go back in time and learn about why they started in the first place. So the first people to fish in Michigan waters and in the Great Lakes were Native Americans. They took what they needed. They were the greatest conservationists. So if they needed to feed 10 people, they only took enough fish for 10 people. They didn't take more. But as more people moved into Michigan and the Great Lakes, fishing started to change. People started to fish more, not only to survive, but also for profit, to maybe sell those fish at a store or to a restaurant. And as that happened, fish populations started to decline. A lot of fish, let's imagine you're a fish in this upper left-hand corner, you probably would get caught, I would imagine, with all of those people there. We started affecting the habitat where fish lived. We took trees off the landscape, which warmed the water and had erosion or dirt that washed into lakes and rivers, so that wasn't good for fish. We didn't always have laws and rules that helped protect natural resources like we do today, so there was some pollution happening. And then in this lower left picture, we see a dam that is going across a river. So it's blocking fish. If you're a salmon and you need to get upstream to spawn, you can't do that if there's a dam across the river. So really all of these reasons together are why fish hatcheries are so important. So let's talk to Brian again and find out what are some of the questions biologists ask before we stock fish into lakes and rivers.
What adaptations and habitats lead the DNR to stock different fish species in different places? Biologists ask a lot of questions before stocking fish, such as, is a habitat good for a species? What effects would stocking have on the fish that are already there? What fish do people want to catch? And does the fish species need our help?
So those are really important questions, and we have to answer all of them before we put fish into a lake or a river. I can't just look at a river and go, you know, I really think about 10,000 salmon would be awesome in that river. It doesn't work that way. We have to have science that tells us it's okay. Is there enough for them to eat? Is the habitat good? Is it the right temperature? And really important, does anybody want to fish for that fish? So if nobody wants to fish for catfish, I'm not putting catfish in that river over there. So those are a lot of the questions we ask before we stock fish. Let's talk now about the different stages of fish development. So here, this picture is showing us green eggs. This is what we call eggs right when they come out of the fish because we spawn fish. We go to lakes, rivers, and streams. We capture the fish, we spawn them, and we bring their fertilized eggs back to the hatchery. This biologist here is rubbing the belly of this walleye or gently squeezing it. That's to get the eggs out. The pictures you're looking at here are actually pictures of salmon eggs. After the fish start to develop a little bit more, we call them eyed eggs. You can start to see their dark eyes through their shells. All right, so here, this short video is going to show us what happens when those eggs get to the fish hatchery. Let's take a look. So they come in a very fancy 5-gallon bucket, fish eggs only. All right, our technician here is draining off the water that they've traveled in. There's a screen on the top of that bucket. Then she's going to unscrew the lid there and dump those eggs into a bath of iodine. Think of it like hand sanitizer for fish eggs. All right, it cleans bacteria, fungus, bad stuff we don't want. Next, we're going to clean them in a bath of fresh water. So that's washing off any of that disinfectant. Now we can take a break. Next, we count the eggs on this tray. And that tells us we have 500 eggs. We dump that known number of eggs into this cylinder of water, and that actually displaces or moves some of the water. Now we've got an average number of eggs per milliliter. We convert that again, and we get number of eggs per liter. So what does that mean? It means we don't have to count 1.5 million eggs by hand, and that we know in this tray, we've got about 5,850 eggs without having to count them individually. So we use science to help us make things a little bit easier. All right. After they hatch, this is what they look like, and they're called sac fry. They've got this kind of bubble-like structure that's on their underside called a yolk sac. And that yolk sac is actually a supply of food for the first few weeks of their life. Now, the video you're looking at here is a Chinook salmon that is in the process of hatching. So you can see that the tail has already started to emerge out of the shell, but you can see that the yolk sac is still inside the shell there, and it's just starting to kind of push out. So this entire process took about 20 minutes. It was done under a microscope, and this is the first time this fall that I've ever seen it this up close. So this is very cool that we get to watch this. All right, so it's moving around, and it's just about to hatch. I think one more move, and there it is. It's starting to ooze out of the shell. There it is. It's starting to pop. It's almost there. And one more second, 2 seconds. And whew, that was a lot of work for that fish. But now it's out of the shell. So it will feed on this yolk sac for the first few weeks of its life. Now, if it's at the hatchery, when it's done with that yolk sac, we'll start to feed it. If it's in the wild, it would start to feed on its own. All right, so after those fish grow here at the hatchery, for salmon, for example, which is what you're looking at on the left, this is about how big they are, 4 to 5 inches when we put them in the rivers. We nickname them fingerlings. Why? Because they're about the size of an adult finger. All right. And this is when they go in about 6 months of age. On the right here in this blue tank, these are musky fingerlings. So they're about the same length, but they're much more narrow. They're almost like a pencil. And we will actually keep those musky for several more months till they get to be about 10 inches. So some fish stay here a little bit longer. It just depends on the space we have and what life stage we like to put them in the lakes and the rivers. All right, so we need a way to get them from the hatchery to the stocking locations. So that's the lakes, the rivers, and the streams. So we have these awesome vehicles called stocking trucks, and they are equipped with oxygen and water and different compartments, and they can travel 9 or 10 hours with fish. Some of our fish from the Wolf Lake go all the way into the western end of the Upper Peninsula. So we have specialized training for our drivers that make sure that they can take care of these fish while they're in the trucks. All right, we're going to talk to Brian again for a couple minutes. He's going to talk a little bit about some of the different aquatic habitats we have here in Michigan, and specifically he'll talk a little bit about inland lakes and some of the fish that we find there.
Today, I'm going to talk about fish, where they live, and how the DNR helps to provide fishing opportunities for anglers, as well as to ensure our lakes, rivers, and streams are healthy for both fish and people. In Michigan, we have 3 main types of aquatic habitats: inland lakes, rivers, and the Great Lakes. A habitat is a place where an organism lives and is made up of food, water, shelter, and space. Some fish are only found in one of these habitat types. Other species are found in all 3. Let's start by talking about inland lakes. Gore Neck Lake is an inland lake near Kalamazoo. Bluegill is the most common fish found there. Bluegills have flattened bodies that help them move through the brush and weed beds, which is a type of habitat that's pretty common in Gore Neck Lake. Another fish that we find in Gore Neck Lake is a largemouth bass. As the name suggests, these fish have a really big mouth. This mouth allows them to easily swallow bluegills and even other things like frogs and ducklings. Gore Neck Lake is home to another predator, which is known as the northern pike. Northern pike have long, skinny bodies. These allow them to hide in gaps along weed edges and move quickly forward to catch smaller fish like minnows. The body type of a fish is directly related to the habitat where it lives and what it eats.
So let's think about that. Fish live in different places based on their body structures and what is found there. So Brian talked about northern pike. So they have long, slender bodies, so they can hide in between the weeds. Or that panfish, like bluegill, have kind of flattened bodies, which also helps them to hide. Inland lakes are very commonly, like I said, there's 11,000 of them. They're common in Michigan, but those fish are adapted to live there where the water's probably a little bit warmer. It's not quickly moving like a river. So different fish are going to live in different habitats. All right, let's talk now a little bit about some of the things that fish need within those different habitats. One of the things they need is oxygen, just like you and I, but they don't breathe like we do. We'll talk more about that later. But if you look at this graph, I want you to look at towards the top here. We've got some fish, trout and salmon, and this chart shows us that they need 12, 13, 14, we'll just call them pieces of oxygen. So they need a lot of oxygen. But as we go down this graph, we can see that some of these fish don't need as much. Down here, we've got muskie and walleye. They only need 5 or 6 pieces of oxygen. So different fish need different amounts of oxygen. If you look at this cup of water I'm holding, there aren't any bubbles in it. What that tells me is there's not very much oxygen in this water. But if I hold this cup of water up, I can see there are lots of big bubbles. Inside those bubbles is oxygen. And so fish need different amounts of oxygen. The fish that like this one that didn't have much are those fish towards the bottom, muskie and walleye. Salmon and trout like lots of oxygen. All right, this next part, you just need 1 second to get ready. We are going to draw a fish and talk about the different anatomy on the external or outside of the fish. Give me 1 second. All right, and I have to warn you that I am not the world's best artist, but I'm gonna do my best for all of you to see what a fish looks like and its external parts. And this is for my good buddy, Craig. All right, so here we go. First, all right, we have what resembles something like a fish here on the screen. All right, now let's give this fish an eye, because fish have eyes, right? They need to see. All right, but fish have very specialized eyes, all right? Their eyes, it's almost like they're always wearing goggles. They've got thick lenses that go across their eyes. They need to see in the water, and they don't have eyelids to protect them, so they've got really special eyes. All right, they also need to be able to smell, so let's give this fish some nostrils. Now, in the fish world, we don't call them nostrils, we call them nares. They don't breathe with them like you and I do. If we take a breath through our nose, we get air into our lungs. Fish don't have lungs, but they do need to smell. All right, let's give this fish a mouth. I like a happy fish, so I'm going to give it a smile. Now, fish have different size mouths. Some have big teeth, little teeth. It depends on where they live and what they eat, how their mouth is shaped and what their teeth are. All right, let's give this fish some gills. All right, fish use gills to breathe, but what happens is the water actually first goes into their mouth and then it passes through their, or what can actually take the oxygen out of the water. So I'm going to put these drops of water so we can kind of remember that the water goes in their mouth, passes through their gills, and there are filaments that take the oxygen out of the water. All right, let's give this fish, let's give it a fin on its back. Looks kind of like a mohawk. That is called a spiny dorsal fin. That is for protection. Fish that are not really quick moving, like maybe a bluegill, they have this to protect them from predators. All right, let's give this fish another fin. Right behind that, a soft dorsal fin. And when I say dorsal, that means on the back of the fish. I'm just gonna put this label. I also have a soft one. That soft dorsal fin is gonna help the fish balance in the water. All right, and if you're a salmon or a trout, you have an extra fin back here called an adipose fin. A little fatty fin that fish in the salmon and trout family have. And get this, scientists aren't exactly sure what it does, but they do have it. All right, I'm gonna close this tail a little bit so we can see it better. Our fancy name for a fish's tail is caudal fin. Think of that like the motor on the boat or the motor, the engine on a car. It's the power source. It's what propels or moves the fish through the water. All right, we're gonna give it another fin down here. This is called the anal fin, and this operates similar to the soft dorsal fin in that it gives the fish balance in the water. In front of that, we're gonna put a little circle. This is the vent for the fish. That's where the fish waste exits the body and also where the milt or eggs are gonna exit the body. All right, we're gonna put another fin up here called the pelvic fin, and then one right above it here called the pectoral fin. These two fins are actually in pairs, so there's one on each side. And these are really, you can think of them like a steering wheel or brakes on a car. They help the fish steer and stop. All right, we are missing, oh, I forgot one thing. I'm gonna put this line that goes across the fish. This is actually made up of a bunch of little receptors, a lateral line. It senses movement and vibrations in the water. So as the fish moves and the water bounces off of rocks and other things, it feels that movement and that vibrations, and it sends a message to its brain. All right, the last thing we're gonna give this fish are scales. All right. Fish have scales for two main reasons. They need to protect their skin. When you go swimming, you probably get waterlogged, wrinkly fingers and toes. Well, imagine you're a fish and you live there all the time. You need to protect your skin. So they have scales for that. They also have scales to help them camouflage and blend in. All right, I think that's a pretty good looking fish. I'm going to move it on the way and we're going to move on. We are going to check and see how we did with our diagram. So we're going to look at a largemouth bass picture here with all of those parts, and let's see how we did. Whoops. Oh, gill cover, I forgot that. All right, that's just the cover that goes across the gills to protect them. They're fairly fragile. Got the caudal fin, lateral line, anal fin, vent, scales, pelvic fins, pectoral. We got it all. Hey, I think we did pretty good on identifying the different parts of a fish and what they do. All right, now we're going to talk about water temperature and fish. Temperature is one of those factors that's really important, just like the oxygen we already talked about. So on the far left here, we've got the blue column, and these are our cold water fish, like salmon and trout. If I was one of them and I wanted to live where it's 50 degrees, I would probably have to have a scarf and a hat because it's really, really cold. They like the water cold, but those other fish, if you follow to the far right, the orange column, those are our warm water fish. I think about those like my beach fish. I like to go to the beach when it is 70 to 80 degrees, and that's about what the temperature is for those fish. So different fish like different temperatures. All right, now we're going to talk about something that actually threatens fish called invasive species. So this is something that we deal with in conservation, and people that work with nature is species from other places that cause harm. So let's first talk about the three main types of species that we would find in most given habitats. So let's start at the top here, native species. This little black-capped chickadee is native to Michigan. It is naturally occurring here, all right? And then you've got your non-native species. Those are like salmon. They're from somewhere else. They've been introduced. And on the bottom here, we've got invasive species. They are introduced and they cause harm. So let's learn about one invasive species that's caused a lot of harm for Michigan fish. And that is this guy you're looking at, which we saw earlier. This is a sea lamprey. You can see the tongue in the middle. That's what actually drills into the fish. It clears the scales away, and then it attaches with all of those other teeth to the side of a fish and feeds on them. They have over 100 teeth on that disc-like circular mouth that you see there. They attach to fish like you see in this picture, and they're feeding on the fluids or the blood of the fish. They're also called vampire fish. This is what one of the wounds looks like here on this fish. You can see kind of the hole. Sometimes the fish can actually die from an infection on that wound site. So these are from the Atlantic Ocean. How did they get into the Great Lakes and into Michigan? They actually got here through canals that we made to bring ships into the Great Lakes. And so when we did that, we basically gave them an opportunity to swim right in behind and with those ships. So they've caused millions and millions of dollars of damage here in the Great Lakes, and we're working hard to get rid of them. Or not get rid of them, to manage them, because we won't get rid of them. That's the problem with invaders. All right, so here we go. We have these bait containers. If you go fishing, I want you to help the DNR and help nature by not spreading invasive species. So I want you to throw what's left in here. If you have leftover bait, throw it in the trash. Don't throw it back in the water. There could be microscopic plants and animals that you don't even know about, and they could spread invasive species. All right, another thing that scientists look at is something called water clarity or turbidity. So how clear the water is. Some fish like it a little bit more clear, but most fish don't like it really dirty. So if we're looking at this container of water, it's pretty clear. Most fish would be relatively happy living here. You probably wouldn't be very happy if your lake or river started to look like this. So when we remove trees, for example, we get dirt and soil that washes into lakes and rivers. And some fish, you can get clogged gills, covered spawning habitat. We measure it in a few different ways. One of the ways we measure it is with something called a Secchi disc. So this disc is actually lowered into the water, and we basically measure when we can't see it anymore, and that tells us how turbid or how clear the water is. Scientists look at this before we put fish in lakes and rivers, and also to kind of assess the health of a lake or a river. So it's one of the things that's really important for fish. All right, now our last big segment, we're going to talk about my favorite fish here in the Great Lakes called lake sturgeon. And I'm going to share my screen here in a second if I can. This fish, all right, this fish is the biggest fish we have here in Michigan and in the Great Lakes. They can be 9 feet long. They can be 300 pounds. And get this, they can live longer than a human. They can live for 150 years. And ladies, females live to be 150. Males, boys, I am really sorry, but male fish only live to be about 80. Still pretty old, but not quite as old as the females, right? So these fish are what we call prehistoric fish. They have been around since dinosaurs. So if we look at this picture of this lake sturgeon, it looks very different from most fish that we might be familiar with here in the Great Lakes. It looks a lot like another fish called a shark. These are also prehistoric. And when I look at these, the thing that stands out to me the most, how they look similar, is their tail. All right, it's got that bigger lobe on the top, smaller lobe on the bottom. We call that a heterocircle tail, but it's something we see in prehistoric ancient fish like these. These fish were at the fish hatchery. I want you to notice what look like spines running down their backs and their sides. Those are bony plates called scutes. Think of it like always wearing a suit of armor. All right, they are bottom feeders, so we can see their mouth on the bottom of their head. They like to eat things like bugs. They do not even have teeth. So that mouth drops down and acts just like a vacuum, and it sucks up all the critters like what you see here, and that's actually how they eat. Now, to learn about where they are now in Michigan as a threatened species, meaning we don't have very many, we have to go back in time and talk about how Native Americans treated them. They were large fish. They could feed a lot of people. They would have celebrations when they moved into the rivers to spawn. But as commercial fishing started in the Great Lakes, commercial fishermen thought they were garbage and junk because they ruined their nets. And so they burned them and left them on the shore to rot. But then they had a change of heart. They said, you know what? If we fish for them, we can sell their eggs as caviar. Whoops, let me get back to my screen. Sell their eggs as caviar, what you see in the upper right-hand corner here. We can make products like wines and beers and jams and jellies, and we can sell the meat. And so that's why today in 2020, they're still a threatened species. But we, the DNR, are working with lots of partners to help raise them and bring them back. So these pictures you're looking at are stream-side hatcheries that we have located throughout Michigan, where we are raising this threatened species to try to restore them. We also provide small fishing opportunities for people too. This is a good example of how the DNR tries to balance both nature and people. So with that, that's the end of my program. I really hope you enjoyed learning about fins, tails, and scales today. So I'll be around, I think, for a few minutes to answer any extra questions. Thanks.
Okay. Well, guys, that concludes our lesson today. Thank you, Shayna, for sharing all about fish and all their parts and habitat. We will stay open for about another 15 minutes to answer questions. You do have several questions, Shayna, that our viewers would like to know. And I've got some other slides to share when we're done with questions. So, but you're free to go anytime, but we do have a couple more things if you'd like to stick around. So the first question I got was, what is behind you?
Such a good question. The fish that are behind me are a very special fish. They are grayling. So this is what a grayling fish looks like. It's got this really big dorsal fin. Their nickname is the sailfish. Now, the fish that are in this aquarium came all the way from Alaska. And that's because right now in Michigan, we don't have grayling, but they're actually native to Michigan. Now, they disappeared from the wild here in Michigan all the way back about, let's see, I think it was 1935. And so the DNR has tried several times to bring them back unsuccessfully, but we have some new information and research that's helping us to try again. So these fish in this tank were actually brought as eggs from Alaska back in 2018. They're education fish here in my tank, but they were actually used as part of our effort to learn more about them, to bring them back. So what I'm going to do really quick, because it's so cool, is I'm going to feed these fish. I'm just going to run in the back. I want you to look right here and watch them swarm while they're eating. I'll be right back.
They know it's feeding time. They're getting excited.
Are they hungry? Oh, yeah. So you can see kind of that big fin. They're beautiful. They're fun to fish for. They're found currently in Alaska and Montana, and hopefully in Michigan soon. So this is a good example of the DNR working to restore a native population. Great question. All right, Ed,
Well,
what else?
You got another good one, and I'm going to combine two questions because they have to do with each other. And that is, why are some of the eggs creamy colored, and how do you separate them?
Ooh, that is a great question. So some of the eggs were whitish or kind of a cream color. Those are eggs that did not survive. And so those are eggs that we will remove. And the way we separate them from we call them good eggs, is we actually float them in salt water, because a good egg versus a bad egg, they have different densities. And so those bad eggs, or the white creamy eggs, will float up to the top, and then we can scoop them off. And remove them, but the good eggs will kind of sink to the bottom. And you can imagine with 1.5 million salmon eggs, it takes quite a long time, but we use salt water. That's a great question.
Very good. And since we got one more here, it says, since the DNR stocks fish, what is the percentage of living fish in Michigan that are naturally reproduced?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm not sure offhand overall, but it used to be for salmon and trout, which are two species that are raised in large quantities by the DNR, that there was about a 70-30, 70% stocked fish to 30% wild fish. I know that has changed since that statistic. It's a little bit dated, where there's more wild fish now, but there are a lot of wild fish. So what we do at the fish hatcheries is we're helping those populations that might be targeted heavily by anglers. So in some cases, we're just really creating a sport fishing opportunity and supplementing. We might be putting fish in a place that they aren't, in high numbers, just to supplement that. We're giving fish that might need extra support to protect them from predators like walleye. Their eggs are super teeny tiny. So I said we raise 40 to 50 million of them, but a lot of them are small when they go out. So it varies by species, what the ratio is, but there is a much higher survival of the fish we raise in the hatchery than what there is out in the wild. But offhand, I'm not exactly sure. So good question.
Very good. And the only other question you got is what is your favorite fish species? I know you touched on the lake sturgeon, but is there any fish that you love there at the hatchery?
Yeah, so lake sturgeon have been, since I've worked for the DNR, my favorite fish, because they get to be so big and they're prehistoric and I love them. But these grayling behind me, like I'm kind of getting attached to them, and because they haven't been here for so long and we're working on them. So I think it's a tie between lake sturgeon and grayling right now. The grayling has moved up, but those are probably my two favorite fish.
Very good. That's all the questions I have, Shayna.
Okay.
So with that said, does anyone else, if you guys have any other questions, I'll give it a couple of minutes to put it in the Q&A and I'll check back. But in closing, that is our program for today. I want to thank everyone for coming to the program. And I want to share my screen real quick for you guys. Hopefully you guys can see this. We also have many other programs. I hope you guys register for another one of our seminars, but don't forget that we also have many other nature at the school programs that you guys can sign up and attend. Our Nature at Home and our Facebook page, My Nature DNR. So I hope you guys go on and like our Facebook page, follow all the educators and what they're doing in the parks and across our fish hatcheries, and check out some more of our programs that we have to offer. And let's see if we have any more questions before we go.